YouTubers, and welcome to the first in a brand new series of Classic Series action figure reviews. As we eagerly await the upcoming release of the 7th Doctor and Imperial Dalek from Underground Toys and Forbidden Planet, I thought it was fitting that we should go back and look at some of the toys from yesteryear. And what better range to look at than Dapol. So this was the first figure released in the range. This figure, came as part of the 25th anniversary box set, which I shall show in one of the later reviews, but it was also released on its own. So if we just take a quick look at the figure, it comes with an accessory, a question mark umbrella like McCoy had. Unfortunately, my one, the paint has just worn away from years of play, and it's an odd sculpt because it's left open rather than being shut. And here's the figure itself. So if we take a look at the face, it bears absolutely no resemblance to Sylvester McCoy whatsoever. Like the upcoming Underground Toys release, it's smiling, and the scarf it's wearing is more reminiscent of the tartan scarf that McCoy wore in Time of the Rani, just without the tartan pattern on it. So the figure itself is sort of based off of that story, but it is really a season 24 and 25 7th Doctor. Now this figure was released again. As you can see, this McCoy has a closed fist and a flat hand, but they re-released this McCoy with open hands. The figure itself is exactly the same, bar the forearms. Unfortunately, this still meant that McCoy couldn't actually hold the umbrella because the handle was so thick. But you could still hang it on his arm. And then, again, they re-released McCoy in his brown jacket from season 26. This was released just in time for season 26 as well, back in 1989. Again, it came with the umbrella. They all came with an umbrella. The sculpt for this figure is exactly the same as the others. It's simply a repaint. You've got the jacket's just been moulded in brown rather than the season 24 and 25 grey, and for some reason they've painted his scarf grey as well. It's not paisley like the real scarf. This figure was originally announced in 1988, and I believe it was announced in the Dapol catalogue. I'm sure it said something like, "Oh yes, complete with scarf and whatever." And then the figure didn't arrive until 1991, and he didn't have a scarf, and he was ridiculously short. If we just compare Tom to McCoy, now bearing in mind McCoy is the shortest Doctor out of all of them so far, Tom was the shortest Doctor figure released by Dapol. It is instantly recognisable as Tom Baker. The curly hair, the big wide-eyed stare and the grin. So likeness-wise, it's not brilliant, but it's not bad. You can see that it's meant to be Tom. The costume, however, is interesting because of the lack of the scarf. So this was the 2nd Doctor to see a release in 1991. So they were spread out slightly. So the next Doctor to see a release was the 3rd Doctor, John Pertwee. The 3rd Doctor came out in 1997, so I was 5 years old at the time, and I can remember actually getting this figure as part of a big box set, because Dapol would do this at times. They released various figures in box sets. They had a 4th Doctor box set, a 3rd Doctor box set, and it would generally be one of the Doctor, a companion, a monster, a Dalek, and a TARDIS. Possibly 2 monsters, because I'm sure I ended up with an extra master. Yes, so this came out in 1997, the year after John Pertwee's death. And it came as... There was a sort of a boost at this point in Dapol figures. Obviously, with the film taking off, Dapol sort of thought, yeah, we can get some new figures out, because Doctor Who's going to come back. And it didn't. Whereas Tom, the tallest of the Doctors, is far too short. John, who is maybe a tad smaller than Tom, hardly anything, is just ridiculously tall. I mean, what on earth were they thinking? Look at that! It's ridiculous. His head is huge. His torso is ridiculously big. He just looks mad. Now, at the time, although I did think the same thing, I mean, look at his neck. His neck looks too thin for the rest of his body. The whole figure is completely out of proportion. Now, it does have some resemblance to John Pertwee in some way. 2001, they released their last Doctor. And it was Patrick Troughton. So, because the licence was on its way out, and obviously trying to make articulated figures is more expensive, Dapol decided to go down the more detailed, unarticulated route. Now, actually, there are prototypes of this figure articulated. There is someone out there who was lucky enough to get the original prototype, so this figure was planned to be articulated, but then they decided against it. It comes on a little stand, which you can take off, so if you do decide to pose it with the rest of your Dapol range, it doesn't look too out of place. Now, the figure itself, obviously there's no articulation, isn't bad. You can tell it's Troughton. He's got that... It's not a terrible likeness. He's got that sort of mischievous grin that Troughton had. And the sculpt on the trousers is pretty good. And, yeah, it's not bad when you compare it to John Pertwee, who's about 8 foot tall in comparison to the rest. But unfortunately, Pat Troughton, although was a short Doctor, is actually the shortest Doctor in the range. I'll just go on to look at the companions now. And the first companion to be released at the same time as the 7th Doctor in 1988 was Mel. Mel had left by the point she came out. It's not a bad figure, if I'm honest. It's based on her costume from Time and the Rani, but it's missing the white stripes on her pink blouse. In terms of costume, apart from the stripes, it's pretty damn decent. I mean, the sculpt on the trousers with the boots, the blouse is excellent with the arms being all puffy and the buttons and things and the lapels. It's actually really good. Yet again, does it actually look like Bonnie Langford? No, not at all. Not the most popular companion.